Hello and welcome. This is a chat to the professional, a show that has been designed to x-ray the activities of professional individuals and corporate bodies. I am Martin Sobu, and as usual, I'm glad to be with you. Today on the show, we are going to be having one of our great African brothers doing us proud in the United States of America. This is someone who actually came to the United States in the company of his parents, of course. His dad had served as the ambassador to Congo Brazzaville at the United Nations. He set out to be a security agent. Somehow, he also felt, well, let me take to criminal justice, but he had his eye somewhere else. He wanted to know how the American system works, especially the political terrain. And he has taken his time to study the democracy in America. He has taken his time to study party and campaign management, and of course, for over 15 years now, he's been into campaign management and political consulting. 10 out of that 15 years, he has, deployed into working with the Congress. So today, we are going to have this African brother talk to us about his experience managing campaigns and consulting politically in the United States, and of course the lessons there are for Africa and African leaders to learn from his experience here in the US. But that will be after this break, so don't go anywhere. The program returns shortly. You're still watching A Chat to the Professional, the show that has been designed to x-ray the activities of professional individuals and corporate bodies. Today we are having one of our African brothers who is residing and of course practicing in the United States of America, Los Angeles County in California to be precise. This is one man whose father had a sojourn in the US as an ambassador of the Congo Democratic or Congo Brazzaville, right?
Brazzaville, yes.
Good. And somehow along the line, he decided that he was going to study American politics, and of course, he found himself neck deep into it. He studied criminal justice, but that did not, stop him from getting into what he had a desire to do, which is getting to know the American politics. And he's been for over 15 years now into campaign management, political consulting, community and government relations, international strategic marketing and communications here in the United States of America. So join me now as I welcome to the show Lambert Adouki. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you took to criminal justice, and along the line you decided, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to study the American politics.
Yes.
So far, what can you say?
I think so far it's been excellent, because when we first moved to this country, I really had no idea the American system, more so the politics. Mm-hmm. And so I was very fascinated by Reverend Jesse Jackson when he ran for president. Mm-hmm. I was recruited in New York to become a volunteer.
Okay.
So during that campaign, which, as a young man, I never really knew what it took to run for president.
Yeah.
So I got involved as a volunteer, and then after that it was over, I went back to the UN, worked a little bit for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then I got a job offer to come to California to help with the California Democrat Party.
Okay.
So I worked for them for about a year, and after that I was like, well, I really like this. My first campaign, we did a voter registration campaign, and I got to meet a lot of politicians, the governor. So my interest grew bigger and bigger.
Now, for over 10 years, you've worked with the Congress, and I'm wondering, your experience with the Congress, do you see what they do here in America translate into good governance, if you like, in Africa? Because year in, year out, we hear about the Congress making laws on how to be a part of the government in Africa. We have aids coming from America to Africa. And at the end of the day, it's usually difficult to pinpoint one thing and say this is what the aid or the assistance we are receiving from American government, for instance, has done in the governance of these African countries.
Well, I think my experience working for Congress, I learned that, you know, when Congress starts from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, everybody already have their agenda, what they want, what kind of law they need to be passed.
Yeah.
And I learned that 90% of the time, there are a lot of lobbyists. They're the one that goes to Capitol Hill and work to help pass the legislation, for example. So Congress is the people house, but they also take other force like lobbyists, but also the people themselves have to come to demand. For example, today, as we speak, the Supreme Court just upheld the president health care law.
Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of people outside private residence calling the Congress people, demanding what they feel that is good for them and for the country.
Yeah.
So it's always worked, but when it comes to us in Africa, you have to have people, business people, the community, professional like ourselves, making the calls and demanding that those bills that were beneficial to Africa, why that those is important. For example, one of the things that I learned is sometimes it could mean that you have to go to Washington and testify. You know, your experience in Nigeria. Why do you think the bill is good or bad?
Well, at this point, viewers, I think we have to take a break. I am enjoying this interaction with Lambert because the area he is getting into is of special interest to me. I want to see how the practice of democracy in Africa, since we all look up to America, how does it turn out, borrowing a leaf from what happens in the United States, for instance. But we are going to take a short break now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back.
Professional handshake. Professional profile.
Nigeria is the most important country in sub-Saharan Africa.
In-depth analysis of professional issues.
Of education, the collapse of culture in Nigeria. Even with cheating, we can't pass. With the enormity of the cheating.
We've not done enough. There's still more to be done.
Join Martin Zobu every week on this channel as he chats with the professionals on the program. A chat with the professionals. A program designed to x-ray the activities of professional individuals and corporate bodies.
Hello viewers, and you're welcome.
Join us.
You're welcome back. You're still watching A Chat with the Professional, and my guest here remains Lambert Adouki, who comes from Congo Brazzaville, but for the past 15 years has been involved in campaign management, political consulting, community and government relations, but most essentially has worked with the Congress for over 10 years. And of course, before we went on that break, you heard him give an overview of how it works here in the United States of America. I'm going to ask you, you talked about lobbying here. How much of impact has lobbying had back in Africa? Because most times what we see is bribery instead of deploying lobbying to achieve desired goals. Of course, if a particular community says this is what we want, rather than go through the congressman or their representatives at either the upper or the lower house, we see situations where even the demands of the community are turned around, and in the end, laws are imposed on the people. And for instance, in Nigeria, where I come from, you have a constitution that says, we, the people of Nigeria, whereas the people were not actually a part of the process of making those laws.
Well, I think the difference with what we see in America with the Congress, from Congress to the state government, the lobbies are good and they're also bad, because sometimes they want law to be passed that may not be beneficial to the people.
Okay.
And I think in Africa, we have to look at the way we run our government. I think a lot of time African governments are run as it's a family business.
Yeah.
You know, but number one, the people have to continue to put pressure.
Okay.
So if there's a law that's passed in America that's going to be beneficial to African, for example, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Congo, it's up to us here to educate the people there that this is what law that we are looking here in Congress and this we look for. But for what's important is, you know, democracy is not easy.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of time, my experience with friends, they always like to compare the African democracy and the American.
Yeah.
The American democracy is still young, only 210 years old, but it still have goods and bad. The difference is you have to have leaders that respect the people, number one, vision, are willing to work for the people. And, but I also believe that is really with today's technology is from your program, from Nigeria to Long Beach, California, to New York. Is we that live here, if we can not only invest, but make sure we know what's going on in Nigeria, is we can go on your side.
Yes.
CNN is going to report what the corporate media want.
Yeah.
But at least what you guys are doing is to report what is taking place on the ground. And then this is how we can make things better. And then we can take the information, perhaps tell our Congress people, well, maybe you should look at this other side of the story, because there's always two sides of the story.
Yes.
I think that's the way we start.
Well, I'm glad you talked about the things we are getting wrong, because we always try to make comparison between democracies in Africa and that of the United States. And you just mentioned that American democracy is still young at 200 and something years.
Yes.
So what then do you say about African democracies? Because if at 200 and something you believe it's still young, then I can tell you that the entire continent of Africa could be referred as toddlers when you talk about democracy. Now, what are the lessons that we should learn? What should we be importing from these growing democracies, or older democracies as it were? How can we import those values that can assist in smooth running of our government, that can eradicate corruption and inefficiencies you know, in government, and of course not losing our values, those cultural values that make us Africans? How can we, you know, differentiate between the two and be able to make maximum use of the good ones?
I think we in Africa, we have a very rich culture. I think that's something that we always should keep. But I think in this new age, we also have to be willing to learn something new, because sometimes culture is like in America when they're saying that you can't mix between church and politics. I think that democracy is something that is global. I think that we have to import lessons from other places. If we can separate between a culture and the global family, to understand how others are able to to succeed,
their
and I think that's the way.
Yeah.
Because the culture is good, but the culture also can keep you behind.
Yeah.
Because you also have to depend on the culture to make decisions, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you make decisions that may not be popular with certain people, but it's better, it's necessary sometimes.
Yeah. Now, you are an African earning a living in the United States of America, managing campaigns and consulting politically.
Yes.
I don't think that could be said of any African country that you would earn a living being a campaign manager without, you know, twisting your hands and of course being labeled corrupt. Because back home, the bulk of the time we have, if you like, allegations of bribery and corruption surrounding political party management, campaign management, and all that. Do you want to share some experience? How do you fund campaigns in the US, for instance? How do you raise funds? How do you manage individuals who run for offices here?
Well, you know, in the United States, up to, I would say 10 years ago, the campaign law, how you raise funds, was very vague.
Okay.
For example, my experience in the past, you had candidates that would do a barbecue and raise $1 million,
Wow.
right? And so the law had to change.
Okay.
So what we have seen now in the last 10 years was actually a law that allow every time you run, you decide to run for Congress or senator, number one, you have to pull your paperwork just like anywhere else.
Okay.
But every time you raise the funds have to be logged in and documented. And the people that give the money to the campaign have to be documented and be reported quarterly, every quarter, based on the law.
Yeah.
How you manage a campaign? Well, for me personally, is if you come to me, you say you want to run for senator. Well, number one is to get to know you. Why are you running? What's your vision? And who's your opposition?
Okay.
Get to know the opposition. And then you put a committee together of finance, medias, community relation, etc. And then you decide, now that you know the opposition, the background, what they are capable, then now you have your candidate. Then you decide which strategy you think is the best.
Okay.
And then you put the strategy together, you introduce to them what you think of the message. So, but even though if you have a perfect message, things always go up and down.
Of course.
But one thing I learned,
because the opposition also has a strategy.
they have a strategy. That's true, right? For example, I had a candidate 3 years ago, very successful lawyer in Los Angeles, and he was running for assembly. He raised close to $400,000.
Wow.
Everything was going good. But when I interviewed him, when he hired me, I asked him, I said, well, what should I expect from you that is bad? He said, nothing. You know, I'm a very successful lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm very good. My background is clean. I said, okay. 30 days before the election, the opposition came up with some paperwork, because this is a guy that had taken his client check. The secretary put that check to his personal account by accident.
Wow.
So the client money was used, but then when they realized the problem, they reimbursed the client.
Okay.
But the state bar felt that it was something that never should have happened and sanctioned him. So it was a case that was open, but they found that it was no wrongdoing. It was closed. So the opposition
picked on that.
They picked on it. So they put it one morning on a newspaper. They put the case number, a lawyer found guilty for corruption, and we lost the election.
Wow.
So you have to get to know your candidate very well.
Uh-huh.
But the message is important because money is not always important.
Yeah.
Because I have seen campaign where we had a lot of money and somebody else who has zero money still won.
Wins.
Yes.
So it's actually an economy and a political environment that is ruled by ideologies, not necessarily the amount of money you have, because that's the lesson here that I am thinking and believing that African leaders and politicians, should learn that ideologies rule the world, not necessarily what we experience at the moment in Africa. Well, what more can I say? I'm just going to ask you one more question, and that's about the future of Africa. Compare the future of Africa in relation to the kind of support, be it political, be it financial or economical, that we receive from the Western world, in this case, the United States of America.
I think the future is good for my kids, for your kids, and every kid across Africa. Technology is our best friend for Africa.
Yeah.
I think that the lesson that I can say today, if I had to return to Congo or Nigeria, the lesson that I will bring is to the way America is like, for example, I live here in Long Beach, the lights are always on. I think that if you give people that, look, we can make it happen, but you also have to have people that believe that government is good and they can serve their community. But just don't serve your community because you want to become a rich man.
Yeah.
You can do that and still be profitable, you know? So I think the lesson is to take the value of the democracy, but it's going to be a slow hill.
The content.
Yes, but I think Africa, there's a lot of good things coming out of Africa today and in the future.
Great. There's a lot of good things, or there are lots and lots of goodies coming the way of Africa today and in the future. Of course, we all know that Africa is the greatest when you talk about the future economy of the world. Of course, when you talk about the emerging markets, you are looking at Africa. But how much of these resources that we have, both human and material, are we able to harness to achieve those desired growth, both technologically and economically? Well, it's been my pleasure chatting with you, Lambert Adouki.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I want to believe that pretty soon we are going to have you back, this time in Nigeria, perhaps when we'll be launching the Professional Elite Club.
Yes, I'm looking forward, and I think that it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you very much for your time. At this moment, we are going to take another short break. By the time I return, I'll be wrapping up the show. Please stay. Well, viewers, that's the much we can take on a chat with a professional today. You will agree with me that Lambert Adouki speaking will give you an insight into his experience managing campaigns and, of course, being a public relations practitioner for most especially the American politicians. We are hoping that someday African democracy will develop to such an extent where ideas will rule, or of course will have or will be the order of the day, rather than what we experience at the moment, a situation where how much money you have is what matters. Of course, listening to him speak, you will also understand that funds raised for political purposes can be verified. Of course, they are verifiable. You heard him talk about people who made donations being verified on a quarterly basis. That's to check the sources of these funds, so that we do not deploy ill-gotten wealth into campaign management, and in the end, you know what happens, because you have to pay back. When it's payback time, it's either you pay, they say, he who pays the piper, he pays the tune. But if we have a structure where the sources of the funds are voluntary, the giver is not expecting anything in return other than good governance, then Africa can beat her hand on the chest and say, we have arrived in democracy. Till next week when I come your way, I remember Martin Sobo saying blessed, and let's do it again next week. I'll see you.
Chats with a professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chats with a professional. With Martin Sobo. A chats with a professional. Oh, 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 oh. A chats with a professional. With Martin Sobo. A chats with a professional will make you know more about the society.